Just moments ago, Princess Anne broke royal protocol, confirming what Britain feared most. In a calm but heartbreaking statement, she revealed that King Charles III's health has taken a sudden and serious turn. The announcement came less than 5 minutes ago, stunning palace aides and royal watchers alike. For months, the monarchy insisted the king was recovering well. Now, that illusion has shattered, and the truth behind the palace doors is finally spilling out. Bombshell confirmation from Princess Anne. It happened quietly and then exploded everywhere. On October 6, 2025, Princess Anne confirmed what royal watchers had whispered for months. King Charles III's illness had become more serious than the palace admitted. The announcement came not from Buckingham Palace, not from royal doctors, but from the princess herself, during an engagement at St. Mary's Hospital in Paddington just before 11 a.m. Her tone was calm, but her words were seismic. "My brother's recovery will take longer than expected." Royal staff froze. Reporters covering the event rushed to verify what they'd just heard. Within 10 minutes, clips spread across social media, with the words "longer than expected" dominating headlines. The palace communications team, blindsided, issued a vague two-line response by 2:30 p.m., confirming that His Majesty continues to rest and remains in good spirits. But by then, the narrative had already escaped their control. What shocked insiders most was Anne's timing. The Princess Royal is known for loyalty, discretion, and silence, traits drilled into her since the 1970s. For her to speak first, unprompted, suggested deep internal tension. Some royal aides reportedly saw it as a controlled breach, a message from inside the family, not its institution. This wasn't rebellion, it was revelation, and perhaps a cry for transparency amid growing unease. For years, Anne has been her brother's quiet pillar, managing duties, shielding him from criticism. But this time, she stepped into the spotlight for a reason. Sources close to Clarence House insist she acted with conscience, not coordination. In a monarchy built on silence, Anne's simple sentence carried more weight than any press release the palace could craft. Anne's words didn't just confirm a rumor. They cracked the wall around the king's private struggle. For the first time, the veil lifted on a story that had been building since early 2024. Behind closed doors, the king's health had been a carefully guarded secret, one managed with precision, caution, and fear of public panic. But now, with Anne's unfiltered confirmation, the truth began to surface, and it revealed a far more complicated journey than anyone imagined. The hidden struggle. It all began quietly, nearly 2 years earlier. In January 2024, King Charles III underwent a routine prostate procedure at the London Clinic, a story widely covered by Town and Country and New York Magazine. At the time, palace officials insisted it was not prostate cancer. But insiders later confirmed that tests from that operation uncovered something more serious, a form of cancer that required immediate but discreet treatment. Through spring 2024, Buckingham Palace issued sparse updates. The official line? The king would postpone select engagements while continuing constitutional duties. Publications like People.com and Town and Country described his schedule as lightened, not halted. But behind the formal tone, the truth was harsher. Charles was undergoing treatment cycles every 3 weeks, alternating between London and Highgrove. His health fluctuated, his energy waned, yet he refused to step back completely. What makes Charles's struggle remarkable is how much he continued to shoulder. He insisted on handling red boxes daily, even during treatment sessions lasting 5 hours at a time. Town and Country reported he often signed documents from his private suite, his way of reminding Britain the crown still functioned. Friends say he balanced pain with purpose, pushing himself to attend engagements despite fatigue and visible frailty. The palace's minimal updates became a double-edged sword. On one hand, they preserved the king's dignity. On the other, they created suspicion. Outlets like Harper's Bazaar and Scatalunya noted the growing public frustration. The less they said, the more people speculated. By autumn 2024, whispers about a possible worsening condition had turned into steady concern. And by March 2025, that concern became reality. By the time March 2025 arrived, the palace's silence could no longer contain the story. The king's condition, once described as manageable, had reached a point that required visible medical intervention. Then came the event that no one in the royal household could spin, a sudden hospital admission that made headlines within hours. For those watching closely, it wasn't just another routine observation. It was the moment the nation realized that the king's battle with cancer was far from over. The hospitalization that triggered alarms. It was March 27, 2025, when King Charles III was quietly admitted to the London Clinic, the same hospital where his diagnosis began. Officially, the statement called it a short period of observation following treatment side effects. But insiders knew this wasn't routine. The king had experienced complications after his 5th round of therapy, prompting doctors to keep him under supervision for 48 hours. The news broke first on AP News and Reuters by 10 a.m. that morning. Within hours, camera crews surrounded the hospital. The palace tried to calm the storm, releasing a brief update through The Guardian by 3:15 p.m., insisting His Majesty was comfortable and stable. Yet those close to the situation painted a more tense picture. One senior aide reportedly said, "Everyone's pretending it's under control, but it's not." By evening, speculation hit fever pitch, with royal watchers comparing the moment to Queen Elizabeth's final hospital stay in 2022. 3 days later, the king was discharged and returned to Clarence House. The palace's follow-up statement emphasized rest and recuperation, while insisting he remained in good spirits. When he appeared publicly on April 5, 2025, smiling faintly as he waved from his car, he looked thinner, composed, but fragile. The image sent mixed emotions across Britain: relief that he was home, fear that this might be temporary. Behind palace walls, the pressure mounted. Staff were instructed to control tone and language in briefings. Internal meetings became tense, with leaks surfacing in People.com and The Guardian describing a communications lockdown. Even within the royal circle, the atmosphere was anxious. Some said the monarchy's silence was protecting dignity. Others whispered it was hiding decline. Either way, the truth was clear. The king's battle was entering a new, more uncertain phase. The hospitalization changed everything. For the public, it confirmed their fears. For the royal household, it shattered the illusion of stability. And, as April 2025 turned into May, more signs of frailty began to show. In his movements, in his schedule, even in his posture. The palace could control the press, but not perception. Soon, every cancelled visit, every delayed event began to tell its own story. The signs were there all along, and now, no one could ignore them. Signs the king was frail all along. Weeks after his March 27, 2025 hospitalization, the clues everyone had missed began to line up. The first was the quiet cancellation of the king's planned Vatican visit in early May 2025. Officially, the palace cited logistical adjustments. Unofficially, courtiers admitted the Italy state trip was impossible. The travel hours, late-night banquets, and climate stress were too much. What once looked like scheduling prudence now felt like an unmistakable warning sign. Observers reviewed the king's previous months and saw a new pattern. During engagements in February 2025, cameras caught subtle pauses, the king resting his left hand on a walking stick between steps. By March 10th, he needed discreet assistance exiting the royal car at Buckingham Palace. Yet photographs released to the press still showed him smiling, framed carefully to hide his reduced mobility. Each appearance was a controlled illusion of vigor. Friends later described a man fighting fatigue behind calm expression. One close aide told The Guardian that Charles's quiet determination became both his strength and his disguise. He refused to complain, often insisting on reading state documents past midnight, even after treatment days. To courtiers, it was devotion. To physicians, stubbornness. He believed showing weakness would betray the throne he waited 74 years to inherit. Looking back, every moment seems recoded with meaning. The slower stride at Sandringham in January, the early departure from the Commonwealth service in March, the tightened jaw during speeches. These weren't random gestures, they were silent evidence. Only now does the public realize that the king had been signaling distress long before the confirmation came. As the king's fragility became visible, one royal figure began stepping forward to fill the gaps: his sister. The Princess Royal had always been the monarchy's workhorse, but in spring 2025, her schedule doubled. She appeared everywhere her brother could not, from Edinburgh Castle ceremonies to rural charity events. And when Anne finally broke her silence about Charles's condition, her sudden prominence made sense. It wasn't rebellion, it was reinforcement, a sister taking charge while the crown quietly struggled to stand. Princess Anne's role. Amplified. By April 2025, Princess Anne was everywhere. One week she accompanied Queen Camilla at the Braemar Highland Gathering. The next, she hosted veterans in Aberdeenshire on her brother's behalf. Royal reporters began calling her the anchor of the monarchy. What started as support soon looked like leadership. Palace insiders told the News International that Anne's calendar now included more than 130 engagements between April and July 2025, nearly double her usual load. Those close to her say the princess felt a moral duty to act. She doesn't see it as ambition, one aide explained. She sees it as loyalty. During events in Scotland in June 2025, cameras caught Anne guiding Camilla through receptions, subtle protective gestures hinting at who truly managed the royal rhythm. With Charles recovering, the Princess Royal became the monarchy's public pulse. But her visible role carried risk. Some critics feared she might be seen as an unofficial spokesperson, or worse, a messenger for difficult truths. When she confirmed the king's prolonged recovery in October 2025, the speculation intensified. Was she acting on family approval or personal conviction? Either way, the timing reignited debate about transparency inside Buckingham Palace. Still, few doubt her intent. Anne's reputation for duty, forged since 1970, shields her from cynicism. She has always been the monarchy's realist, blunt, disciplined, reliable. In this crisis, her steadiness became the monarchy's greatest weapon against uncertainty. Where others hesitated, Anne simply kept working. While Anne carried the visible weight, another figure moved quietly but strategically into the spotlight: Queen Camilla. Her presence had already grown during the king's treatments, but after March 2025, her role expanded further. Engagements once shared with Charles were now hers alone. Invitations once addressed to Their Majesties arrived marked Her Majesty the Queen. What looked like temporary substitution was, in truth, a rebalancing of royal power, graceful, subtle, and increasingly impossible to overlook. Camilla steps in. From May to September 2025, Queen Camilla's public calendar filled faster than ever. In June, she opened the Chelsea Flower Show solo. In July, she hosted literacy awards at Clarence House without her husband. The palace described it as supporting continuity, but seasoned watchers saw a new dynamic forming. Camilla was now the face of reassurance, calm, smiling, composed, while Charles fought to regain strength behind closed doors. Sources told People.com that Camilla began managing his workload personally, screening requests and coordinating with senior staff. By August 2025, she chaired weekly briefings once led by Charles himself. Courtiers noted her growing command. She decided which engagements to postpone, which letters required his signature, and which statements went public. Every decision bore her discreet approval before reaching the king's desk. Public perception shifted too. Once dismissed as a secondary figure, Camilla was suddenly praised for steadiness. Her speeches, carefully worded and limited to 10 minutes each, emphasized unity and gratitude. The BBC's July 12th broadcast captured her addressing veterans, her voice calm but firm. "We continue the king's work together." Those words became symbolic, a quiet declaration that she was now both shield and steward. Inside the palace, officials described the atmosphere as delicate management under a velvet glove. No one used the phrase power transition, but everyone felt it. Camilla wasn't seizing control, she was absorbing necessity. The monarchy, short on working royals and heavy with uncertainty, needed a matriarchal presence. In the absence of strength, she became its strength, the keeper of calm while the crown healed. With Anne holding the outer front and Camilla commanding from within, the royal spotlight shifted toward the one man waiting in silence: Prince William. The heir to the throne had watched his father's decline with measured restraint, torn between filial worry and constitutional duty. As autumn 2025 approached, whispers grew louder. Was William preparing for something more permanent? The stage was set for a future monarch weighing the moment, whether to step forward or stay still, while history decided for him. William in the shadows, weighing the future. As autumn 2025 unfolded, Prince William found himself caught between duty and dread. Behind palace gates, aides said he was present but measured, quietly preparing for every scenario. Since the king's hospitalization in March 2025, William had increased his private briefings with constitutional advisors, attending meetings twice weekly at Kensington Palace. Yet in public, he remained composed, smiling during engagements, speaking of family unity, never once hinting at the growing weight of expectation. Those closest to him say this has been his hardest season. Watching his father, a man who waited 7 decades to wear the crown, now weakened, has forced William to think not as a son, but as a future monarch. Every visit, every conversation with doctors at the London clinic carried an unspoken question: how much time is left? The monarchy could not plan for sympathy. It had to plan for survival. At home, Catherine quietly became his balance. During July and August 2025, while recovering from her own medical leave, she reportedly told friends that William feels the tide turning. He began reviewing the Council of State protocols, the formal process that would authorize him to act if the king became incapacitated. It was practical, not hopeful, preparation wrapped in denial. In public, William's restraint has been his strength. He has refused to fuel speculation or challenge the palace line. His words remain calm. "My father's in good spirits. We continue our work." But insiders know the truth. The heir has begun quietly rehearsing for an unwanted role. The throne is no longer a distant horizon. It's a shadow falling closer by the day. Even as William maintained composure, another battle raged behind palace doors, one not of health, but of words. The palace communication team, already battered by leaks and speculation, faced an impossible task. Every statement risked revealing too much. Every silence invited more rumors. As the king's condition fluctuated through September 2025, the monarchy entered its most delicate phase in decades. A crisis not just of health, but of information. And in this silence, chaos found its echo. Crisis communication and palace silence. Throughout 2025, the palace's updates followed the same pattern: brief, formal, and maddeningly vague. Each began with phrases like, "His Majesty remains in good spirits," and ended with, "No further comment at this time." In a media landscape that thrives on speculation, those sentences became sparks. Every withheld detail, every day without photos, fed new theories. Reuters and The Guardian described it as the palace's most controlled silence since 1997. The official reason was privacy. Behind that, however, lay panic. Leaks emerged from lower-level staff, whispering of canceled meetings and nighttime visits from medical specialists. By mid-September 2025, conflicting accounts appeared across People.com, Town & Country, and Daily Mail online. Some said the king was improving. Others said he was too weak to work. No one inside the firm could agree on which version to defend. Every institution needs credibility, and the crown's depends on trust. But by keeping quiet, the palace created an information vacuum. The result? Conspiracy, confusion, and a growing sense that something was being hidden. A former communications officer told Harper's Bazaar that the silence was meant to protect him. But it began to damage them. Royal watchers called it the new Diana problem. Truth delayed becomes truth distorted. Still, insiders insist there's a logic to the hush. The monarchy's goal was stability, not transparency. By minimizing comment, they hoped to preserve calm during uncertainty. Yet, in the digital age, silence speaks louder than words. And as October approached, it became clear. The longer they stayed quiet, the louder the world would demand answers. Behind that silence, real constitutional questions began to stir. If the king could not perform his duties indefinitely, who would? And how soon? The monarchy has procedures for such moments, but rarely uses them. Rumors of a Regency Act review began surfacing in legal circles by late September 2025, signaling that preparations were quietly underway. And as that possibility loomed, anxiety spread from palace corridors to the public square. Britain began to wonder, was transition already beginning? Constitutional stakes and succession. Anxiety. The British monarchy has survived wars, abdications, and scandals, but illness presents a different kind of test. Under the 1937 Regency Act, if a monarch becomes too ill to fulfill duties, A regent, usually the heir, assumes those powers temporarily. As October 2025 began, whispers of such contingency planning grew louder. Legal advisors at Clarence House reportedly reviewed procedures, preparing documents just in case. The symbolism was enormous. For Prince William, it would mean crossing the line from preparation to participation. For Queen Camilla, it would formalize her influence as consort beside a diminished sovereign. And for the nation, it would mark the first royal regency in nearly 90 years. Yet no official confirmation came, only a steady stream of no-comment statements that did little to ease public anxiety. Polls conducted by YouGov in October 2025 showed mixed emotions. 47% of Britons supported a temporary regency, while 39% believed the king should continue if medically possible. The divide reflected something deeper, a question of faith. Was the monarchy's continuity built on tradition or on transparency? Each passing week without clarity tested that balance further. Inside the palace, even courtiers seemed uncertain how to proceed. They tiptoed between duty and denial, unsure when the private struggle of one man becomes the constitutional concern of millions. The monarchy's strength has always been endurance, but endurance without openness can turn into fragility. The crown was holding, but only just. By late October 2025, one question overshadowed them all. What now? Princess Anne's revelation, Camilla's rise, William's quiet readiness, all pointed toward a slow but visible shift. The king remained in recovery, the palace in caution, the public in suspense. The moment no one dared name, transition, was now being quietly prepared behind those ornate gates. And as the royal family closed ranks once more, Britain watched, wondering if history was about to turn another royal parentage. What this means for the monarchy. Going forward. Whatever happens next, the monarchy has already changed. King Charles III's health crisis has forced a generational recalibration, one where Princess Anne, Queen Camilla, and Prince William have each stepped into roles once considered unthinkable. The crown no longer rests on one figure. It balances across three. Insiders describe it as a relay, not a replacement, a transition by degrees rather than decree. If Charles recovers, the monarchy may return to rhythm, stronger for its honesty. If not, the groundwork for William's gradual ascendancy is already in place. Advisors close to Kensington Palace say he's been briefed on ceremonial contingencies through 2026, including potential tours and state openings. The machinery of continuity, polished by centuries, now hums quietly in the background. But beneath the structure lies emotion. A son preparing to step into his father's shoes. A sister carrying the family's burden. A queen navigating public skepticism and private sorrow. These are not symbols. They are people bound by an ancient system still expected to look flawless under fire. The strength of the crown has always been its silence. But this year proved that sometimes silence breaks itself. Princess Anne's statement may have seemed small, a single sentence in October 2025, yet it changed everything. It marked the moment the royal veil lifted, revealing not weakness, but humanity. And whether Charles returns or yields, the monarchy stands renewed, bruised, but breathing, still learning to survive not through myth, but through truth. As Princess Anne's words echo across the nation, questions multiply. How long has the palace known? And what happens if King Charles can no longer serve? Behind the composure lies a family facing its greatest test, and a country bracing for change. One thing is clear: this moment will define the future of the British monarchy. Stay tuned, because what happens next could alter royal history forever.